recording. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining today. It is Thursday, and it is August 27th, and we are officially in verdict watch for the Lindsay Clancy trial. So I am going to give some updates about what happened this week and just talk about how we got to today, basically. So let me just go over the basic facts of this case. So this is a case about Lindsay Clancy. She is a mother of three that in 2023, she on January 24th, apparently she unalived three of her children. She had a 5-year-old daughter, she had a 3-year-old son, and also a 8-month-old baby boy. So how the story unfolds is basically leading up until this tragic day. She was married to her husband. They got married in 2016, I'm sorry. They were married in December of 2016. Then they had their first child in 2017, which was also in December. And then they continued their life. She was a labor and delivery nurse. He was in tech. He was in IT. Apparently, her husband worked for Microsoft, and they bought a house in Duxbury, Massachusetts. It was a very affluent, nice area, nice house. Apparently, it was around upwards of $500,000, 3-bedroom, 1.5 bath, around 1,700 square feet. And this is where they decided to raise their family. So 2017, December, it was Christmas Eve, actually, December 24th, they had their first child, Cora. And then about 3 years later, Dawson was born, their first son. I believe he was born, I don't have the dates in front of me, but it was September 30th of, I'm going to say 2019. And then they had their third child, Callan, and he was born on May 26th of 2022. So Lindsay being a labor and delivery nurse, obviously she continued with her career path, and after she would have her children, she would take a maternity leave. And then what we would expect is she going to go back to work? So with her first child, Cora, she was scheduled to go back to work after her maternity leave, but there was some anxiety there, some anxiousness. It was her first child. So she did go back to work, but she went back part-time. And then with her second child, I will be honest here and say, I just don't know exactly how that unfolded. There was some anxiousness. There was some, anxiety going back to work. I do have some mixed information on that. I've been challenged on it, but my information tells me she did try to perhaps get on some antidepressants at that point, but it kind of worked against her. She was breastfeeding Dawson during that time, so she discontinued it because she chose to breastfeed versus taking the medication. So that's all I know. I don't know if that's 100% factual. I honestly just rather move forward and just not talk about that. That's just what I read in the research when I was reading up on Lindsay. So then in 2022, she has her third son, Callan, on May 26th. So this is kind of where the focus really is. So she has on May 26th, and then the summer is in front of her, right? So the way that her family, her husband, the people around her kind of explain how she was feeling or her state of mind, how she was behaving after the birth of her third child was basically, they said that she was pretty normal, nothing to speak of, nothing out of context. They even said that she was euphoric. She was very eager to mother. She got right back into exercising. Some even said that she ran, she went for a run, which I don't know how this worked, but she ran the day he was born. So I'm assuming she ran before the birth. That's how, you know, she was just into her health, her fitness, her well-being. And so she, right after the birth, she went right back into her fitness. She even ran a 5K that summer. I believe it was late June. So if he was born May 26th, and if she ran the 5K late June, I mean, that's going to be within 4 weeks, right? I have 3 children. There was no way that I would be able to run up the stairs within 4 weeks of having any one of my kids. So that's good. Good on her. That's excellent, right? And she wanted to continue this fitness, this activity, and take care of herself, her body, her mental state. That's how I kind of understand it, because if you're working out, you're taking care of your core, that means that's connected to your brain too, right? That's the dopamine, that's all that pumping, that goodness, you know, you want more of it, give it to me, right? So, but then here comes August. Again, July is not mentioned that anything's remarkable. There's nothing special about it. But then come August, this is where there's kind of a shift. And the way that the people around her kind of explain it is, it was during the week of August 18th. So probably as we could think of, like, third week of August, towards the end, that it just went into a complete halt. It was like a dark cloud came over her and everything changed. It was an abrupt stop, and just out of nowhere, she became very depressed, and she was riddled with insomnia, anxiety, anxiousness, panic, she was riddled with thoughts that were just, she couldn't figure out why she had all these negative thoughts going through her head. She was trying to figure out scheduling and getting frustrated with the children and this, and why aren't they sleeping, and all this nonsense. And she was just like, oh my gosh, life, I can't, what's going on? And the way that everybody around her explains it is that it was sudden. It just came out of nowhere. Up until that point, she was euphoric. She was excited. She was running. She was exercising. She did a 5K. She just was a very in tune mother and wife and person and friend and daughter, all of it. So what happened in August? I don't know. But what I do know is just the events that have been told to us during this trial, right? So let's talk about those. But I need to take a drink of water. So, as mentioned, she was a labor and delivery nurse, and her maternity leave was coming up to an end. And from what I understand, she was scheduled to return to work in September. Also, sorry, her husband, he was on paternity leave, and his paternity leave was coming to an end, and I'm sorry, I have to cough. I'm so sorry. And his paternity leave was coming to an end. So he was scheduled to go back to work in September. Now, this information I don't know, but this is just something I'm assuming. I know that her daughter was starting, or she was going to be 5 that December, and she was maybe starting preschool. School was starting for that area. I looked it up. The district, it was starting on August 31st. It's a beautiful day, but that day is when their district was starting school. Perhaps Cora was starting school on that day too. As a mom, or even as a dad, as a grandparent, anybody out there, we can kind of attest that first day of school for any child is kind of a big deal. That can add a lot of stressors too, right? And hold on, Chloe just said you're becoming You're becoming one of the Trunchbull twins. Their closing is catching. Was she, oh, because of my throat? Yeah. They tossed one of those things they had stuck in their throat into my throat, and I can't get it out. So anyway, yes. Where's my coins? So maybe school was a stressor for her too, that her firstborn was starting school. We don't know, because that hasn't been mentioned. That's just me assuming, right? So what do? They look to try to ease some of these stressors. Lindsay decides she's not going back to work. They get a nanny. They hire, I don't have her name in front of me, but they hire a nanny from September to December. The nanny was on the witness stand as well. And one thing that I can say the nanny never said was that Lindsay said that she was having thoughts of unaliving not only her children, but herself. But the nanny did share that Lindsay shared with her the other feelings that she had, the anxiety, the insomnia, the anxiousness, the depression, the feeling helpless, the helplessness with the medications, the doctors, the frustrations, all of that was shared. So all of that is contested across the board. There's no questions about that, right? So she concurred all that. So moving on through those months, Lindsay starts to reaches out to seek medical help, and she starts seeking out help, I think in October. She, I think, only visits face-to-face maybe one time. The rest of the visits are all virtual. And now remember, this is 2022. It's not 2020 or 2021. This is now 2022, and not only 2022, but this is October, November 2022 going into 2023. We're not so tied down with having to have all of our visits virtual, and anywhere we go has to be done virtually or any of that. We're past that, right? So, but in this situation, her medical professionals decided that for her conditions and for her claims that it was okay to just see her virtually. That's whatever, right? I'm not here to discuss that. Moving on. So then we have October, November, December, and she's given upwards of 30 different medications within a 4-month period of time. And she's going back, telling them some of them, I don't like the side effects are making me feel wonky. This one is doing this one's doing that. They're trying to switch it. They're giving her a different one. They're giving her a different sleep aid. They're giving her something for anxiety. They're giving her, and they're kind of playing, ping pong with this and going back and forth. And okay, now we're in January. So what can we say about January? So first weeks of January, well, first day of January, January 1st, Lindsay checks herself into a mental facility. She put herself into there. And on New Year's Day, she's like, I gotta go. And she's there for 5 days. From my understanding, she was supposed to be there, I think, a week or maybe 6 days, and she checked herself out because it was her daughter's birthday party that weekend. And she checked herself out so she can attend Cora's birthday party. Now remember, Cora's birthday is on December 24th. So she's a Christmas baby. So it makes sense that they don't really celebrate her birthday that time. They have to do it either before or after. And it kind of makes sense that, okay, she had her birthday party after. And obviously the mom wants to be there for her daughter's birthday party, so she leaves early. Now, that makes sense to me. Do I know this? Do I have it written down on some piece of paper? Did I go to the ward and say, hey guys, give me Miss Clancy's paperwork. I want to verify all this. Absolutely not. I'm going by what everybody else goes by, and that is the trial, the internet, and all of that. So then They're still she's trying to do the virtual visits with Dr. Tufts and she's getting more of I think it's the loprazolam. I think it's like the Xanax, anxiety medications. And there's some discrepancies because she's getting it several days back to back. And there's different milligrams here. Okay, it happened. Now we're at January 22nd. And so I believe, can somebody help me on this one? Chloe, was January 22nd the day that they had the dinner with the friend, or was that January 23rd? I just want to make sure before I say this, because then they have dinner with a friend of his, it's like a family friend, but mostly her husband's friend. It's a male, I believe his name is Kyle. And the takeaway from that is he shares with his friend that his wife is struggling with a benzo addiction. Why that's mentioned it was the 22nd. Okay, so then on January 22nd, thank you, Chloe, they have a dinner, and for whatever reason, he shares with his friend that his wife is struggling with a benzo addiction. So be it. Okay. And on the 23rd, Lindsay checks in with her doctor again, saying that I don't know what she said because that's not privy to me, but she gets more medication. And now that leads us to the 24th, right? So here we are on January 24th, which is the day where everything transpired. So what happens on this day? So from what we know, Lindsay takes her children. Her daughter had a stomach ache, and she took her daughter to the doctor. Now, this is the way I understand. The appointment was already scheduled because it was a well child visit due to the fact that Cora turned 5. So the appointment was already on the books because it was her 5-year-old appointment. So then when she took her into this appointment, and if I'm wrong, somebody let me know. And then during this appointment, the stomach ache that Cora had at preschool the day before, 2 days before, was mentioned. I think the day before was mentioned to the doctor. And the doctor suggested using the children's form of Miralax, which is Pedilax. It's like PEDI-LAX. And that was the pediatrician's suggestion that morning. So then Lindsay texts Patrick, and she kind of says like Cora's urine is clear. Patrick says, oh, good. Kind of, they go back and forth. I think Patrick even says, you're a good mama, something like that. And they go on to carry out their day. It was cold that day, I think 32 degrees, maybe, I don't know, during the day, but it was snow on the ground. Lindsay takes her 3 children and she takes them outside during the day, and they build a snowman. It was fun. They do things that mothers and children do in weather like this. I don't know the indoor activities, but I know at some point there was food made, and that was chicken nuggets in a bowl with some ranch or some creamy white sauce. And there's that too. Now we're getting to like the 4 o'clock hour. So around 4, and I had these written down, but I don't have this part in front of me. Around 4:15 or something, Lindsay sends Patrick a text. He works in the basement, but sending him a text because he works in the basement is not abnormal. I mean, he works in the basement. He works from home. So she doesn't know if he's in a meeting, he's on a call, if he's doing a Zoom. So of course she's going to send him a text. She's not going to run down the stairs, and that doesn't make sense to me. A lot of people had an issue with the text within the home. To me, that doesn't make a difference. So she sends him a text asking if having 3V for dinner is okay. She had no time. She didn't have time to make anything for dinner. It's been a long day. And he responds with, that's fine, or something along those lines. And then the next interaction, I think, is at like 5:03 or 5:00 something, which to me makes sense, because if he's working downstairs, his day ends at 5, then he's coming upstairs and then they're talking about it, right? Like, hey, you want to order from 3V? What do you want to get from there? So they kind of discuss it face to face. That part doesn't need to be over text. In the meantime, Lindsay, while he's still downstairs, she calls CVS to see if they have the children's Miralax in stock, and she also maps the distance from the 3V restaurant to the CVS, does all the stuff that I think is totally normal. Nothing abnormal to me there either. And when he comes upstairs, he decides he wants a risotto bowl with like scallops and salmon or something. She chooses a Mediterranean bowl, and she calls in the order, and he leaves to pick up the CVS Pedilax, supposedly, and then the 3V dinner order, right? So this is how we understand it. He's gone for about, I understand, 45 minutes or so. He comes back around 6:09, and this is when he comes in the door, and as all of us should kind of assume, 6 o'clock, dinner time, 3 children, walking in the door, you know how you left the house, but now you're coming in the house and it's silence, complete silence. It's not normal. 6 o'clock, dinner time, kids should be crazy, loud, all this should be something. At least somebody should be scurrying around, but he hears nothing. So he runs up the stairs, runs all the way up to his bedroom, which is on the second floor. He notices his bedroom is locked or closed. He opens the door. He notices the window's open. He looks out the window and apparently sees his wife on the ground. This part I'm kind of not sure on, but then he goes and finds her on the ground outside, calls 911 and asks her, where's the children? Where's the children? In her state on the ground, she says, they're in the basement somehow, right? So apparently this is where she says they're in the basement, but okay, I'm not getting into that part yet. But he's calling 911 and he's waiting, allegedly, yes, allegedly. And yeah, I'm not getting animated yet. I'm saving it because I'm going to play devil's advocate on this whole thing in a little bit. And I'm going to reverse this whole thing. And then I'm going to play it in like a whole loop, and then I'm going to redo it. All right. And then that's when that's when I'm going to get animated. Or I can just do it right now. But so now he stood there and waited. Yeah, it's his wife. Of course he's going to sit there and wait with her. She's hurt. Something's wrong. And he's, what did you do? Where's the kids? What happened? But he waited and waited, but okay, it's not okay. And then paramedics arrive, and this is when they find out kids are in the basement, and everybody goes running in the basement. Screams are heard, this, that. Things are found around necks. 2 children are pronounced dead on the scene, dead on arrival. 1, the baby, he still had a faint heartbeat. They rushed him to, I believe it was Boston Children's Medical, and unfortunately, he succumbed to his injuries on January 27th, so 4 days later, and yeah, so Dawson did not survive either. So now we have an apparent crime scene, right? As the husband was saying, what did you do? What did you do? What happened? So this is how we find ourselves here today on Verdict Watch with Lindsay Clancy, who was charged with 3 counts of murder, right? And a premeditated murder at that. So this week, there was some very interesting witnesses. 2 of them I'd like to talk about. One is, I hope I say his name right. I don't have it written down, but it was like Avram Mack. And then the other one was Hilburn. Let me see if I have that one written down. Hilburn, right? Hilbron. So let me just say this. The defense rested on Friday, and then the state rested on Monday of this week. So at that point, there was still, or when the defense rested, Kevin Reddington was still questioning this Mac expert, and there was still this Kirk Hilburn guy. Hillybraun apparently is a pronoun. Thank you, Chloe. What I found very interesting is Red wanted to know where they stayed. And on Friday, he was questioning this Mac guy, and he was like, so where did you stay? When you were here questioning my client, where did you stay? And he was like, I don't remember exactly originally like how he said it, but he was like, in a room, I slept in a bed. But he just kept avoiding, he would circle around it. And Red was like, in a hotel? And finally he said, in a house. It's like, okay, that's all I want to know, right? And then when he gets to Hilbron, he kind of gets to the same kind of line of questioning. And he's like, it first started with him asking how much he charges, and this and that, and well, don't you have it? Don't you have it in front of me? I mean, in front of you, you bill the Commonwealth, so wouldn't you know how much you've made on this case? And he's asking him all these questions, and Hilburn looking, and he's like, finally does the math, and then he goes, so while I'm asking these questions, where did you stay when you were questioning my client? Because you were with Mac, right? You guys were together when you were questioning my client. So where did you stay? And he's like, I don't know. He knew every answer up until that point, literally just spat it out. Boom, 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 boom. But then gets to that, and he's like, I don't know. Well, you don't know. And something I thought of at that point is like, well, if he's billing the Commonwealth, wouldn't he have billed the Commonwealth for his hotel stay during that time? So why couldn't he just go through and be like, oh, I stayed at the Cadillac Hotel right here. Why didn't he do that? But okay. But finally, he said, I stayed at a hotel. He's like, oh. Red's like, oh, okay. Good enough. Oh, Red said, you don't know where you stayed, would you? Stay at a van down by the river? I thought that was great. But then finally it comes out, oh, I stayed at a hotel. So and I don't know for a fact, this is just what I'm kind of researching and finding out, is I guess, because what we do know is the Clancy house was sold to somebody that didn't want to know that they bought it. Originally it was like, they're an anonymous buyer. Well, yeah, okay, but this is also the internet. So we find out it was sold to the DA, like a previous DA. I'm not 100% clear on that. But what I think Red was alluding to is that not they, but maybe the Mac stayed at the Clancy house with the previous DA or the DA when he was interviewing or questioning Lindsay during that time with the other doctor. So that's all I wanted to say. And then what are your thoughts on that? Because does that not kind of cross some lines? Right? Is that not a little, well, if he got to stay at the house, well, Shouldn't everybody get to sleep at the house and see how it is? Like, what's going on here? Why is there favoritism? Is it favoritism? What is this? So, all right, just chew on that for a little bit. So, all right, that was just on my mind ever since that questioning came through. And, and also he could have checked where he stayed because he charges the Commonwealth for it. And then also with Mac, he's charging them too. So for that night, was it just like a wash? Was he like, yeah, you know what? Y'all don't have to pay me for tonight. I'm good. Like, what happened? Because they charge them for everything, right? They gotta, like, how does the billing work? Okay, so that was that. So then on Tuesday, they continued with the questioning, and then they brought in this other guy, Sathoff. Wow. You could watch that at 2x and still it'll last you till the next day. It took him a long time to speak, but I think it was because he wanted to make sure that his words were heard and he got his points across and didn't mess up like everybody else, ma'am, like everybody else, or that his words weren't going to be torn apart like everybody else's words. Maybe that's why he spent so much time on making sure that everything he said was deliberate, concise, pronounced. I don't know. But then I also saw that when Red put up his notes about him on the what is it called? A projector? Oh, whoops, sorry. That it at the top it said elf on a shelf. Did anybody else catch that? I thought that was like Red making little notes on how to remember certain people and based on how they look, but I don't know. I'm not saying that anybody looks like the elf on the shelf, and if you do, then you're obviously very cute. So, okay. So then that led us to getting where we are today, which is verdict watch and closing, and then they did their closing statements and all that. So something that I'd like to point out is while Red was questioning all of these people, and he wanted to get a diagnosis out of all of the medical professionals, the psychiatrists, psychologists, and find out of all of them, how many diagnosed Lindsay with BP2, just having manic disorder, BP1, just being anxious, and all that. And he went down the list at one point, and he said, so let me get this right. He goes, I spilled water all over my notebook, so chances are I'm not going to find it. But it was like a list of like 5 doctors, and only one, it seemed, that it wasn't BP2. And I am going to find it. And if I don't find it now, I will at some point. Just give me a second here. I know. Okay. Helpers. This is probably because I just wrote it with mine. So Helper diagnosed her with BP2. Galata, BP2. Lesnick, BP2. Spinelli, BP1. Zeisel. I don't have down what Zeisel diagnosed her with, but I think that was BP2 as well. So all of these had her diagnosed as BP2, except for one, Spinelli, BP1, right? And then And then this person, hold on, I know. Mac, he diagnosed her with major depressive disorder. And I just had to point that out because it's all of these doctors all saying this one thing, but one, and this guy happens to be now maybe spending the night at certain places. I don't know, something's fishy. So then here's the other thing that I am really curious about, okay? The confession. What do we know about the confession? Because from my understanding, this confession is basically like, this is how I imagine it. Lindsay wakes up, or Lindsay is comatose in this bed, and I'm sorry, I just had this stuff on I think it's this new lip stuff I'm using. And she's shackled to this bed, right? She's not zip tied. She's literally handcuffed with metal clanks, jewelry to the bed, even though the medical staff, everybody there knows that at this point, I think she was paralyzed from here, from the thoracic down, right? Where's she gonna go? What's she gonna do? But okay. And she's got all the stuff in her mouth, the tubes, like this. There's like, you can even see the blood all over her mouth. Her eyes are rolled back. She's like that, but let's make sure she's not going anywhere. And so January 24th, they rush her to the hospital. Let's say she's there by, I don't know, I'm gonna give her extra time. Let's say she's there by 9 p.m. And they notice, she's got the Jefferson fracture, this, that, cuts her neck is sliced, her wrists. They rush her in, they shackle her, and the next day they put officers outside her room. There's a security guard. She's unconscious, but on January 25th, at 8:11 p.m., this woman is charged with 2 counts of murder and 1 count of, I think, so 2 counts of murder and then 1 attempted murder by a strangulation. Like 24 hours later, did they interrogate her? Did they question her? Did they get her accounts of what transpired, what led to this? Well, if they did, we don't know about it. But they made their decision pretty dang quick, didn't they? And they charged her. And then 3 days later, they added the attempted murder, they changed that to the 3rd murder charge. Did they question her between that time? We don't know. So again, this confession, this is just my opinion here, okay? Totally my opinion. When you're in the hospital, I've been in the hospital more than I'd like to admit. And when you're in a state of going in and out of consciousness and with anesthesia and all these medications and this and that, even if your eyes are closed and your breathing is labored, you might not want to open your eyes just because you know that there's a lot of people in the room, but you can hear things, or your body is absorbing things, either could be consciously or unconsciously. Like we don't know how the brain works yet 100%. So like when she was unconscious, how are we to know that the nurses, the staff, the police, the security, people in and out, when they were, because they served a search warrant on her as well, right? When they went in, what she heard subconsciously, all of this, that, like all this information. And then when she finally comes to, and she notices she's shackled to the bed and all this stuff's going on. She doesn't know what's going on. She's confused. And what does she say? Do I need a lawyer? Well, why wouldn't that be a thought in not only her mind, but anybody's mind if they wake up looking like that? If I woke up, if I went to sleep today like this, and I woke up like that, I would say, do I need a lawyer? I mean, why is she being crucified for asking what we're all taught in our lives to ask, and that is to defend ourselves, right? But now that's a question of contention, because she must have known, because right away when she woke up, she wanted a lawyer. Well, okay, all right. And okay, so let's see if there's any questions in the meantime. I want to thank everybody for joining as well. Don't forget to like, share, and most of all, the TikTokers, please go over to my YouTube and subscribe. I need to get to 1,000 so I can get to the next level, and then I'll annoy you more for what I need you to do after that. But right now, get over there and subscribe so I can get to 1,000, and let's go from there. Thank you. In the meantime, press like, share, tap that screen, give me a little tap, 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 and let me know if you have any questions. And let's see what we have over here. So, Christy says, I just can't grasp it. The mental pictures that trial was giving me kept me away. I've been watching highlights daily. What does everyone think? Hung jury. So what does everybody think with the jury today? Do you think, or with the jury getting the case today on the deliberations? Do you think it's going to come back with a verdict, or do you think they're going to come back hung? I think, honestly, my personal opinion is that they're going to be hung. I really do. There's 9 women. I believe there's 9 women, 3 men. And from what I understand, the 4th woman is a grandmother. Good for her. And Brian Enton said that from the looks of it, he feels that the majority of all of the jurors are around 40 and older. So I don't know how that plays into it, but maybe. Hi, Joanna. I hope you're feeling better. Joanna says either hung jury or not criminally guilty, in my opinion. That could be it too. Hi, Chloe. Thanks for always helping out. Chloe says, I think not guilty because insanity, but if it goes longer than Tuesday, then hung jury. Yes. So you think they would go over the weekend? Yeah, possibly. But they're not sequestered, so they get to go home and all that. But at the same time, they have been at this for, I mean, where are we today? We're at day 22, 23, right? 22. Christy says, so if they do find her not guilty / insanity, what happens to her? Does she go home? I actually don't know how. Oh, but Chloe answered that. So here we go. Chloe says, no, she stays in the hospital probably for many, many years until she's no longer dangerous to herself or others. Thank you for that. Hey, Jeannie. Jeannie says she stays in the mental health facility and is re-evaluated in 6 months. Oh, wow. Ivy Speed. Hi, Ivy. Ivy says, in my opinion, the prosecutors crossed a lot of lines. Yeah, I think a lot of people think that. All right, let's see what we have on TikTok. Let's see if we have any questions here. I can't read the name, but I think it's Leisha says, I think Red did that because he knew where they stayed. Pretty sure he had his PI on it. Interesting. Tiffany says, I think the whole case is off and a bunch of no good people testifying. Good point. Becca says, I don't know how she functioned with the meds that she was on. Well, we don't know how many of them she was always taking too, right? Because all of her bottles were all different. Like some were still filled, some were empty. We just don't know. Christy says, hear me out. Doesn't it seem like when she woke up, she'd be more concerned with, did I kill my kids? Did I off my kids than a lawyer? Well, from my understanding, she went to call her spouse, and during that call, she left a message, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong on this. And during this call, she left a message and asked if the kids were safe. So this was ripped apart by a lot of people, and I think even on the stand, I'm not quite sure, so please don't. This is all me just guessing right now. This is guesswork. I think it was when the chaplain was on the stand, and she was asked about when Lindsay made that statement, or when she called and said, are the kids safe? I think the chaplain even made the assumption to say she wanted to know, if they were safe with God. Well, how does she know? I mean, unless that came out of that person's mouth who is on the stand right now, in my opinion, we can't assume any of that. And I don't think that's fair to assume that. So I don't know. Ivy Speed says, I don't like that they added the manslaughter option because I feel like she's just not guilty. So what do we think that the manslaughter option is? Like, what's the point of it? Some people say that it's so she doesn't end up like Casey Anthony. What do we think about that? Is that why the manslaughter charge is on there? So it's not a Casey Anthony situation? Free the Fly says, no, she asked if the kids were safe. Chaplain said, yes, they're with God. Oh, okay. Thank you so much for correcting me on that. So I was wrong, and this is what actually happened. So I knew there was something there, and I did not understand it. So on TikTok, I have a member that corrected me, Free the Flies. And when Lindsay asked, are the kids safe? The chaplain said, yes, they're with God. So that's where that came from. So I was wrong. And when I'm wrong, I'll say I'm wrong. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Becca says, Patrick said she confessed. Paramedics said she couldn't speak. Right. Yeah. See, that's the thing. Like, we don't have. Where's the confession? I want to see the confession. I really do. Jeannie says, if she was in psychosis, it is possible she didn't remember anything was wrong with Cora, Dawson, and Callan. That is 100% true too. We're trying to learn and find out how this all works. And this is what's kind of, it's sad, but it's also a great lesson for society right now. We're all learning about postpartum psychosis and postpartum depression as a whole. And Christy says, yeah, but how did she know she might need a lawyer then? Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, if I were to wait, if I was like this, like today, and then tomorrow I wake up and I'm literally broken in half with all this stuff on me, but in addition to that, I'm shackled to the bed. I'm going to say, do I need a lawyer? Because sure, I could have, all this stuff wrong with me and have all the tubes and pipes and, be in a hospital bed and all that. And I won't think that I need a lawyer until I see that I'm handcuffed to the bed and there's security guard or police and security guards all around me. Then yeah, I'm going to be like, well, what's going on? Do I need a lawyer? Like, what's happening here? What's this environment all about? So I think that's why she's assuming that. Had none of that environment existed, I don't think she would have asked that. Chloe says defense asked for it in case there are holdouts on the jury who won't go for the not criminally responsible and want first degree. Gives a charge to compromise gives a charge to compromise on, even though it doesn't fit at all. So thank you, Chloe. There's a better and the explanation that absolutely makes sense on why the manslaughter charge was added. Jeannie says she was handcuffed to a bed, armed security guards around her in the hospital bed. Yes. Thank you guys for the follows, the likes. Don't forget to tap that screen. Go over to YouTube and give me a subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just click of the button, just like you're tapping that screen. Tap that. Tap, tap, tap. Thank you for joining. Don't forget to share. JW says, J-Dubs, no evidence to back that nonsense accusation. Which one? Jason asks, was she found guilty? No, we are in verdict watch. All right, so moving on. So this voice. So there's this whole story about Lindsay hearing a voice, right? And this is kind of what led her, what got her to this point and assisted or convinced her to carry out these acts. But one thing that was never mentioned is she says she hears this voice. The voice is a commanding voice, but the voice didn't tell her exactly what to do. It just says, it was just a commanding voice that you had to get this done right now. But it didn't tell her how you had to get it done, what order or or maybe it said what order or something, but it, like, to me, it's just like, so she thought of all of those in betweens by herself. So there was a voice and then her own thought, a voice and then her own thought, so I would like to know medically, professionally, like through a professional, is that how those commanding voices work? That, because, and I know that, I don't remember which, it was a witness on the stand that he did say that you can have lucid thoughts and be in psychosis at the same time, but can it toggle that quickly? Like, can you be on command from this voice and it's saying, do this right now, and then you say, okay, but I'm going to think of a very sophisticated way to do it while you're commanding me. I'm truly just wondering on how the voice commands work, honestly, because the voice was never heard from again, right? The voice is non-existent now. We don't know about the voice anymore. So it was just a sound, but it never directed her on how to carry out the act. That's what I'm trying to say. Natty, where are you? Then, so there I have an issue with that. Next thing, while this voice is commanding her, but it's not telling her how to carry it out, she's able to make these motions and these acts in sequence, right? So she's lucid or is cognizant enough to carry this out in a sequential kind of act, but it's being commanded, right? So it's kind of like we're supposed to kind of feel, or I don't know, like the way I was listening to it or kind of believing it, it was like a puppet, like she was being led by this voice, like a puppet, like a puppeteer, right? But it never told her how to carry it out, how to do it. It didn't. Hi. Right? So that's where I kind of have an issue with the voice thing, or not an issue, but it's just like kind of in my mind about that too, right? Then with her putting this confession together, she doesn't, when she puts it together, there's gaps where there's real gaps, like in my mind, and the gaps exist like where her spouse can't fill in the gaps either. And that to me says that story has been told by somebody else over and over again, and she's repeating that same story. But if she were to tell the story, she can't, and she tells it as like a make-believe, and that's why there's added details that don't exist, but in her mind they make sense. For example, cutting the screen. She says, if I were to, like in her mind, if I were to do this, I would have to cut the screen, therefore that's how I get out. But the screen was never cut. Even today during the closing arguments, the Commonwealth themselves even said she gave 3 different accounts of the story. Well, yeah, that's what happens when you don't know. That's what you literally say. If you can't remember your lie, don't tell her, something like that, because you'll never be able to repeat it over and over again. Stay with your truth, because a truth you can repeat a million times over, but a lie you can't. So if she's telling 3 different accounts, maybe because she doesn't know, right? I don't know. And the Commonwealth literally said it themselves. And then they want to also go talk about that. Oh, this is what the Commonwealth said too. And I'm going to try to remember it word for word, but it's on my phone here that I'm doing TikTok. But they said she could have just offed herself. She didn't have to do the kids too. Like, for them to even utter those words and for those words to leave their lips, and say she could have just did that to herself. Why'd she have to take the kids too? Do they have no decency for human life at all? Like at all. So they don't see her as a person, as a human being sitting in that wheelchair that was truly suffering and struggling with what was happening in her mind and the imbalance and the chemical, like all that. Instead, what they said is she could have gone. She could have taken her own life. F her. But why'd she have to take the kids? Like, to me, that was so low and such a disgrace for human life, and a mother who, I mean, no matter what the circumstances are, it's clear as day that she was going through something if she did this, and she's hurting right now. She's listening to what was happening during that time that she just was unaware. And it hurts for her to hear this. It hurts for her to see the pictures. It hurts for her to hear the names even. But then the state is going to sit there, who represents not only, but represents the whole state, the state that she chose to raise her children in, and is saying that about her life. Like, wow.
I think the biggest problem with everyone not believing Lindsay, it's because we're in a trial trying to see if she was mentally insane, and that doesn't sit right with a lot of people because they don't understand psychosis or mental illness. So to bring back a not guilty by reason of insanity verdict is kind of like a catch-22 on the brain, because you've got to say not guilty, right?
Right.
So people caught up on the not guilty. No one is supporting Lindsay because they think it's okay to kill your kids if you're not mentally okay. That gives you a pass. No one that supports, I mean, I can't say no one because there's a lot of crazies out there today.
But don't forget, we're on TikTok, so you can't use all those words.
Yeah. So,
Right.
got to take a few things back. No one supports Lindsay because she did what she did. They support the fact that she was going through mental health struggles and no one was listening. It's just unfortunate that the kids paid the ultimate price.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have to make something okay out of the most heinous of crimes against your children.
Right. Absolutely. Amen to that.
That's why I'll always say, speak up if your head's not in the right spot.
Right.
Say it.
Well, she tried. But she tried. And that's what's kind of messy about this, is this person, this woman, tried so many times. She checked herself in to a mental psychiatric ward, and they said, yeah, we don't see anything wrong with you. She called the suicide hotline twice, and they said, you're fine. She did everything that we are taught to do, and I mean, I don't know.
Some mental health practitioners tried to help. I think it was whoever was at home with her the most wasn't supporting the mental health part, and it was playing a big, like, maybe it's just me, maybe it's just in my head, maybe I'm wrong and he's right, maybe I should just get my shit together and, like, not stress so much about it.
Yeah.
If she gaslit into thinking it's all on her,
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're going to try and find someone that aligns with what you're hearing. Not to mention that I think she was misdiagnosed from the first baby, and it was playing catch up with all the medications that she was taking. It was affecting her actual mental health condition that I think is more of a bipolar issue than a hormone induced mental issue.
Yeah.
Which plays a big part in what medications you're taking.
Right.
And the combination of medications you're taking.
Right.
Because a lot of antipsychotic medications will make you feel worse to start with before you build it up in your system, have the therapy, start using the tools and recognizing thought patterns and navigating your way through the bad thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
then think of taking a certain medication, then stopping it, starting something else, and the levels that spike in your body and then making your brain do weird things.
Right. Yeah. And I think she knew too, she knows where her baseline is, and she knew where Lindsay is, who Lindsay is, right? And when they were giving her these mood medications like the Zoloft and stuff like that would alter her moods, shift them, she knew that it was changing her own, her personality, who she is as a person, and for her to advocate for herself and just be like, no, this isn't it. This isn't why I'm here. This isn't what I need fixing. You're changing the wrong thing in my brain. And she tried to communicate that to them, and instead they were like, well, then you need a higher dose. And she's like, no, not even that. But I'll try it because I'm going to listen. I'm going to be a good patient. And she just kept trying and all that, but she knew what was happening within her, and
I honestly think it's a big thing with who you see about your mental health issues. Sometimes it pays to speak to a counselor or a psychologist before a psychiatrist. And I'm not giving this in a professional setting. This is just my personal opinion from personal experience, because a psychiatrist, in my personal experience, will try and medicate you while giving you therapy, whereas a psychologist will listen and try and give you tools to use on your own brain before they touch medication, before they discuss medication. They will try and get you to a place where you're dealing with things on your own without a chemical aid.
Well,
obviously.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. And in addition to that, I think it's imperative for these professionals to also see these patients in person. And because there is, when I dealt with a lot of similar, not similar, like what Lindsay's dealing with, but I had to go through a period where I had to see psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, go through lots of medications and figure out what's going to work best for me. And it was during a crucial time in my life, and it was imperative. It was quick. It was like, you have to take this now. We have to help you, all that, right? I understand the urgency of what they're putting, of what they wanted to do with Lindsay and the medications. And that's why I feel I understand it a little bit more too, is because I went through something similar within a short period of time like she did. And I was prescribed probably 30, 40, 50 medications within a 4 to 6 month span as well, right? So, but there was no way, and this was like 20 years ago too, but even then, I know there was no way that I couldn't get away with it with just calling them on the phone and being like, there's no way I can make it today. And there was times that I physically couldn't move. Like I had a condition where I physically I had to be carried. So if I had to call them, there was a reason why I'd have to call in for my appointment, not because I was just sad or couldn't sleep or whatever. I physically could not move, so I would have to be carried. So there would be reasons why I would beg them if they could just do my appointment over the phone, and they would say, no, figure it out. We need to see you. And after all of that happened, one of the doctors over there, she knew everything that I was going through. This was a big situation for me. And she sent me my file. She sent me this huge, one day I just got this big package in the mail, and it was all of my records. And what I learned while reading these records is that when you go to your appointment, they are watching you from when you walk, not only when you walk or in their room, like when you're seeing the doctor, they're judging you from when you're in the waiting room. They had notes on me that I had no idea doctors were even watching. My notes included stuff like, as she walked into the office from the elevator, she was slow, but she looked okay. As she sat down, she did this. When she went up to the desk to check in, this is how she behaved. They had everything written down from my movements until I walked out the door for all of my appointments to assess me and to tell if I'm doing better or worse. They talked about my makeup. They talked about my hair. They talked about my clothes. They talked about my earrings. They talked about my skin. They talked about everything, my shoes, my socks, literally all of it. So that's why I don't understand why it was not imperative month after month for these doctors to see Lindsay in person, because they had to with me. And I wasn't the only one. I mean, there was patients there. So where's the disconnect here? I can't imagine. And I know this, where I was going, this is a massive known place that I can't imagine that it just so happened that my doctors were writing everything about me. Come on, this was protocol, had to have been. So why didn't they care to do this about her, right? Because they would see if she's sluggish, if she's moving quickly, what her demeanor's like. But no, they took everything by this. Like right here, you guys have no idea if I can walk or not, right? You don't know if I'm going to wheel away from here, or if I'm going to run or wobble. Nobody knows. So how did they know what she was like? It drives me nuts. She could have just faked the whole thing or not. I mean, they need to see them. They can hear in their voices when they look away, when they turn, this, that. They could, it's different when you're face to face. So I don't know. That's what drove me nuts.
I think there's a lot to be spoken about when it comes to psychotherapy and phone calls. You can hide so much on a phone call.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. 100%. That's why it's just there. She was failed by many. So then moving on, there's like these methods of parental, mostly mother unalivings of children. And there's category of 5 specifically. The other day, one of the specialists, I don't remember which one right now, he spoke of all of them, but the one that he said that Lindsay suffered from is altruistic filicide. Filicide stands for when a parent takes the life of a child, right? So I will read the exact definition of filicide. Just kidding. I thought I had it, but I don't. But basically, it's just off the top of my head, altruistic filicide is when a mother takes the life of their children because they feel that if they don't bring them with them, if they don't take their life, then they won't be cared for in the best way possible if they're left on this earth. So it's almost like I have to take you off of this earth because I'm leaving the earth too. And because I'm not going to be here, I have to take you with me. Nobody else is going to care for you the way I do. I have to make sure that you won't be harmed while I'm not on this earth anymore. Therefore, I need to take you off of this earth, if that makes sense. So that's altruistic filicide. And they categorized the unalivings under that category for Lindsay. So that was part of the closing statements for the Commonwealth as well. And I will say, though, that when Reddington gave his closing statement, I kind of thought that he was going to go on there and he was going to be like, you know, like imagining that all of the jurors wearing red and he was the bull. And he was just going to go like, whoa. But he seemed tired, rightly so. Apparently right before in the parking lot, as he's approaching the courthouse, he made a comment saying something along the lines of, I did the best that I could. So did he sound defeated? I'm not sure. I didn't hear it. I only read it. So during his closing statement, he said the same stuff that we're all talking about. She was failed. He did speak on the investigation. He said things like, not only, he's like, I'm not saying that it was, I think he said things, I'm not using his exact words here. I'm guessing what he said. Saying things like, I'm not saying it was a shoddy investigation. I'm not saying it was a weak investigation. I'm basically saying there was no investigation. So he mentioned the testing of the crushed pills, that where's the crusher? Why wasn't that ever tested? He just kind of spoke on where they need to think of the reasonable doubt, kind of. Where was this? Where was that? What about this? What about that? Some takeaways from the Commonwealth's closing statement. A lot of us, or not a lot of us, a lot of people on social media and all that are pointing fingers at Lindsay's ex-husband. And for that, because of that, or why they're doing that is because apparently throughout this whole trial, throughout this whole case, rather than there being an actual confession or actual words from Lindsay or what is happening from Lindsay, everything pretty much is relying on what Patrick said. Every testimony is, well, Patrick said this, well, Patrick said that, well, Patrick said this. Well, okay, but what did Lindsay say? Because she's the one that got arrested for this. So can't we hear what she's got to say? But no, Patrick said, so we got to go by what Patrick said. And of course, during the Commonwealth's closing statements, they say, and Patrick said this, and Patrick said that. So even they still followed suit with, we need to believe what Patrick said. And that was it. And then they stopped it. I think there was just one objection from Red. That was because they just kept going on and on about the whole unaliving herself. And Red took, I think, 45 to 50 minutes of his hour that he was allotted. The Commonwealth took their whole hour, if not more. And And then right after that, the judge spoke to the jurors further. Then then there was like a box that woman did. She like picked numbers out, so it would be anonymous, or like I don't know the right words for that. So they wouldn't. Natty, what was that? Like she picked the numbers out of the box for the jurors, so she could pick which jurors would be deliberating out of all of them. So they were picked by a number, and then they got the case and went back at 12:30. I think 12:30 Eastern time today is when deliberations began. So yeah.
No word from deliberations yet?
Nothing. I think they left for the day at 4:30.
I have a feeling it'll be a hung jury.
I do too. I really do.
So if it's a hung jury,
Mm-hmm.
do we start all over again?
Well, from my understanding, then I think the judge decides if they want to retry her or not. I'm trying to think what was the last case that was a hung jury that we watched it together, and then there was a case we just watched not too long ago. It was a hung jury, I think 2 times maybe, and they retried it. But it'll be up to Chloe says, yep, start all over.
Dang it.
Chloe says, yep, or start all over. The district attorneys decide whether to recharge. They will. So Chloe, at this point, can they add charges for anybody else, open an investigation, or it just stays with Lindsay?
Yes, I can.
Sorry, I have a big mouse sitting next to me.
Who was that?
Mr. Jason.
Hi, Jason. How are you?
If it's a retrial, and they can press other charges against other people because it's a restart. That's in Australia anyway.
Chloe says they could, but it wouldn't look good for them. Wouldn't look so good for them given they just did this whole fiasco. Yeah, no doubt. Jeannie says, how about they do an actual investigation for starters? Yeah, seriously.
That's what I want, an actual investigation.
Jason, Christy says hi to you too.
Pardon?
Christy says hi to Jason too.
Hello.
Say hi, Christy.
Hi, Christy.
Chloe says yes, but it's completely up to the DA to recharge or drop charges or change things, etc. So if it's, let's say it's a hung jury, we find out at the latest on Monday, it's a hung jury. How soon would we find out about it moving forward? Like, what's the timeline on that? Is it pretty immediate, or do we have to wait for them to regroup? And is there like months that pass? Are there appeal? Like, how does that work?
I think it has to be filed within 30 days, but then it's up to the courts, I guess, to set a trial date or a hearing time.
Chloe says in this case, probably the same day.
Oh.
That'll be good.
Oh.
She says DA would probably announce intent to refile. Thank you, Chloe.
Thanks, Chloe.
Thanks, Chloe. Just another XMO says, could they do a trial for M2 instead of M1? Does it have to be the same charges? So I think that's what we were just talking about, that. Yes, but it's completely up to the DA to recharge or drop charges or change things. CC says, I don't think they want another trial. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think they want another trial?
I think they do, because a lot of people are hell-bent on accountability, which rightly so. I'm not saying that, there shouldn't be accountability, but I just think there needs to be more people accountable.
Yeah. Home 2521 says, I can't imagine, but they are idiots, so they will probably do another trial. So, well, if there's anything else, let me know. Does anybody have any questions? I'll start wrapping it up.
I have questions.
What's your question?
What is wrong with everyone today?
It's a full moon. Don't you know?
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming because I'm in the future.
You're the future. So it's a full moon for you today. It's 99% for me.
Yes.
Oh.
I'm at 100% today.
Oh.
And I'm telling you right now, buckle up for tomorrow.
I did read about a new case, though. Everybody remember Lorena Bobbitt?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there was another happenstance with a woman that tried to do the same thing with her significant other's member. She tried to Lorena Bobbitt, her somebody other, but she missed, and she instead cut his thigh. So she was just charged with a misdemeanor.
I'll pay that.
I love signing off on a giggle.
And with that, I will see you guys later. Thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, Lee.
Bye-bye.
Love you, my Yankee Noodles.
Bye.
See you, love.
See ya.